It's wonderful to see how the social media presence then plays into real life, if you like, sort of the three-dimensional life of people in person. And it's amazing how many people that I do meet who have looked at what I've put out there on social media and know quite a lot about what I'm working on, where I've been. And so firstly, it's a fantastic icebreaker. But secondly, it's also a terrific way to kind of sense check. Is the message getting out there about the kinds of work that we do, the support that we provide for companies? So for me, that's a great virtuous circle to be able to talk to a brand new person who feels like they know me a little bit because they knew that I was in LA or they knew that I'm a Seahawks fan.
Have you ever noticed that some of the best ideas come from unexpected places? Your next breakthrough may come from a leader facing similar challenges, but in a completely different sector. Welcome to Chief Influencer. I'm your host, Anthony Shop. Join us as we explore how today's successful leaders inspire, influence, and connect with others. Chief Influencer is a production of Social Driver and the Communications Board, who have teamed up to spotlight how great leaders and communicators are making their impact in the world. This episode is brought to you by the George Washington University's College of Professional Studies. With in-person and online programs ranging from master's degrees in public relations strategy to certificate programs in digital communications, GW offers more than just the credentials to help working professionals get ahead. It prepares them to be leaders in their field. As a proud GW graduate myself, I can attest that faculty members combine academic rigor with real-world lessons that can't always be found in textbooks. Check out cps.gwu.edu for more information. Today, my guest is Emma Wade-Smith. She is His Majesty's Trade Commissioner for North America and Consul General in New York, representing the United Kingdom. Prior to this appointment, Emma spent nearly 6 years leading the UK's government Pan-African Regional Trade and Investment Team as Her Majesty's Trade Commissioner for Africa. Before moving into the world of trade and investment, Emma worked at the British Embassy in Washington, D.C., where I am today, as the UK's Counselor for Foreign and Security Policy. I came across Emma because she is a diplomat who really embraces social media. Others look at her as a role model as she uses these tools to get her message out. And we're going to talk about why she chooses to do that. So Emma, welcome to Chief Influencer. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be with you.
Well, I am really excited about this conversation because, we believe some of the most effective leaders, they're more than chief executives or chief of mission in the case of a diplomat. They are chief influencers. They find a way to get their message out to people, both on the inside and on the outside. And I just love to start by asking that as a diplomat, can you tell us who is it that you have to influence to achieve the impact that you want to see in the world?
Oh my goodness. Sometimes the answer to that question feels like it's everyone. I look across the board, thinking about as a trade commissioner, I have a number of different audiences. So the first one is really the UK business community. And it gets very hard to try to parcel that into different bits. But, think about the entire UK business community, because I'm trying to raise awareness about what we offer as the Department for Business and Trade, and help more companies really embrace the opportunity to export around the world. That's a massive community in its own right. Then I'm also looking at US and Canadian investors and, a different set of messages for a different audience there, because I'm trying to inspire them to think about the UK, to invest in, and, what a great place the UK is as a place for their investments. And then, of course, it's policymakers, decision makers across businesses, but policymakers in government, because one of the key things we're trying to do is affect change in the business environment, and anything that makes it more laborious, more complex, more expensive, more time consuming for companies to do that trade and investment across borders are the types of things that we're trying to change. And so as I say, that feels like that's quite a lot of people. And then you start to think about, on my Consul General role, the influencers and the decision makers across New York and Pennsylvania and New Jersey and Connecticut, in business, in the world of education, education and arts and culture and science and research. So pretty much, as I say, the first answer was probably the quickest and the easiest, and that's the answer is everyone. So,
well, it occurs to me that there's a lot of outside events that you obviously can't control, whether that's major policy changes that have happened over the last several years in the UK, or just events like a coronation. And I wonder, do those create opportunities for you to connect with the people you need to influence and educate them? Or maybe even sometimes they create challenges because everyone's distracted with what's on TV rather than something that's part of your agenda.
Do you know, I always think that events are opportunities, and whether those are sad events, as with the case when Her Majesty the Queen passed last year, or they're happy events like the coronation this year. It's always an opportunity to use the platform that event gives you to connect with other people. And so, for example, some of those royal moments that we've had, and that can also include royal visitors, right? Some of those opportunities are real moments to engage with senior government and policy officials that can sometimes be quite tricky to otherwise get their attention and keep their attention for a while. And so it's always an opportunity. I think that the issue then becomes, how do you best use that opportunity in the most appropriate way? And obviously, the opportunity, the moment for the coronation is a different moment entirely from a funeral, to take those two examples. But each one has been a really important step for me and for the organisation to really take our messages to a different audience. The trick then, of course, is how do you keep that audience once you've found them? And that's where the sort of day-to-day hard yards comes in.
Mm-hmm. I love that mindset of treating these events that we can't control as opportunities. And I think you do that so well through the platforms that you use. I want to talk about social media and LinkedIn in particular. I mean, it is very clear that you're a trailblazer when it comes to being a diplomat who uses social media, and especially, I think, using LinkedIn as a platform through your personal LinkedIn page. I have to tell you, I was just at a roundtable event recently where I was with two different embassy officials and from very different parts of the world, and each of their ambassadors, for different reasons, will not have personal social media accounts. They only communicate through the official channels. So in the case of LinkedIn, they use their company page on LinkedIn rather than having an individual platform for those individual ambassadors. But you have taken a different approach. Your personal page on LinkedIn is one that is very active, and you use that to show the business community and others in the various audiences you mentioned what you're doing and why it's important. So I'd love to just hear how you landed on doing that, because this is not common in your world that you are in terms of diplomacy and foreign affairs, and what you've learned along the way.
So, I'm slightly unnerved to be thought of as a trailblazer on LinkedIn. I'm now slightly considering whether I'm doing the right thing. But it all started for me when I became the Trade Commissioner for Africa. So, what's that, 7-8 years ago, and I really knew that I had this vast audience across 54 countries, as well as in the UK, to try to reach with my messaging. And I figured, however many planes I jumped on, however many time zones I crossed, I would never, and frankly, however many speaking engagements I took and conferences I attended, I would never be able to get beyond a very small percentage of those people that I wanted to try to connect with. And so in looking at the different platforms, LinkedIn seemed a really obvious one for me because of that business community that it represents. And that's been terrific, and I've really rolled that over into the role I have now in North America. And one of the things I really love about it is that it is so focused on the corporate world, and so it's not just about policymakers. It's also about the corporate leaders and the kinds of issues that they're facing in their companies, and with the micro and the macro environment that they're dealing with. So it's a terrific way for me to stay informed about what's happening, in those companies, what business leaders are thinking about, the achievements they celebrate, some of the reports that they're working on. So it's been terrific for keeping me informed, as well as for helping me to inform others about what we're up to.
And how do you perceive LinkedIn now, several years later? I think you maybe said 7 years from when you started. What lessons have you learned using it to maximize that platform?
Well, I'm an enthusiast, and so my natural instinct getting onto LinkedIn is to sort of like so much stuff, because actually there's a terrific feed that comes through from business leaders and others right across the world. And so I've learned over time that less can be more, and my team here in particular have really helped me to appreciate that. And so, it's recognizing the power of the power of a personal comment, and actually probably even more important than all of that, the importance of engaging in a conversation, so that this isn't just a sort of megaphone moment in one directional traffic. It's, for me, the bits that I love most. So when you can see people engaging and commenting and responding. So that for me is probably the learning I've been on. Don't like everything, be sort of quite choosy, I guess, and kind of use that moment wisely, but also to engage in a conversation as much as that's possible to do. I think the other thing is actually to try stuff. And I think that, LinkedIn has brought in a number of innovations over the last few years, and its users have also innovated within the platform. So, I try to do as much sort of video or imagery as possible, because I think that's an increasingly effective way to get people's attention and sort of hold it for a few seconds at least while we try to impart some knowledge. And so, thinking about how we do that, how we use polling and that sort of thing to really engage the audience.
Something that strikes me as you talk about, seeing content in the feed, liking it, joining a conversation, is that there are a number of leaders whose instinct is, yes, I should be on this platform. Let me just hand the keys to someone and have them do it for me. And I'm never going to really look at it myself. But it obviously is a different, animal that when you actually are logging in and liking it, and that's been your approach. So can you talk about the importance of that? And if you had a colleague, maybe a peer of yours say, oh, I'm thinking of getting on LinkedIn like you, I'm just going to have, a person on my team just totally run it for me. I'm not going to have the app on my phone. I'm not going to look at it. Would that work? What would you say to that leader to encourage them to take a more hands-on approach like you have?
Yeah, I could understand why that's tempting. And I certainly know people that do that. But right at the very start, when I first was thinking, how do I reach this extraordinary diverse audience? And I was looking at LinkedIn, and a very good friend of mine in South Africa said to me, look, if you're going to do this, and I think you should, be really you want it to be natural, you want it to be authentic, you want to make it a conversation, you want it to be interesting, but most of all, you really want to be people will spot it a mile off if you are a corporate robotic voice, sort of tripping out the sort of the standard sort of management speak that people hear sometimes. And so it was really important to me right from the very start that people got a sense of who I am and the passion and the energy that I personally bring to the role, and to sustain that. And so, it's really important to be involved personally. I get messages through LinkedIn all the time. Occasionally they'll be like, I don't know if you monitored this account yourself. And I'm like, yes, I absolutely do. Because that is a really important part of what makes LinkedIn such a powerful platform and a vehicle for me, is that it's not just about staying on top of the people you're already connected to. It's about meeting new people. It's about, frankly, finding out more about people that you know you're going to go and meet. So, the kinds of events that you go to as well. If you know who's going to be in the room, why would you not want to find out as much as you can about them? So, it can really help with those icebreakers for people who are networking in person. It can help with follow-up. The personal messaging thing has been amazing and has helped me so many times when, I've had a call from a minister who said, do we know somebody in this company? And I'm like, possibly. And then so you go into LinkedIn and you realize that, either you're directly connected to somebody who can take you to who you need, or you find your way. And so it's an amazingly powerful network. All of that said, I have to recognize that this is also a team effort. And so, I simply don't have the time or the skills, frankly, to produce all the content that goes up onto my posts. And so, the content producers and the marketing and the comms team that I have here are brilliant. And we brainstorm all the time. What are the issues? How do we best get those messages across? What kind of visuals, what kind of imagery, what kind of recordings do we want to do? How do we keep innovating and adapting to keep things fresh and to kind of keep the audience interested. And so, the team here are an amazing help to enable me to do more than simply, say in direct prose, I've been here and I've done that, or I think about this. So it's, but I do think that personal involvement really matters and helps shape and frame the look and feel of what's coming out there.
I love that. I think the personal involvement, but acknowledging that you have a very busy role. In fact, you have two of them. And so you can't spend all of your time being a social media manager on your LinkedIn account. And so finding that balance. And I guess I wonder if a leader is thinking about getting more active or having a presence on social media and says, I'm going to do this. Yeah, I want to be involved. I'm really busy. I need to work with my team. Now that you've been doing this and working with a team to learn your voice and to, brainstorm the type of content, what lessons would you share about how a leader can build that rapport? Because it strikes me, it sounds like, from you and from talking to your team, you do have a really great rapport about how you work together on that. And it's not a chore, it's that you found something that works and that you enjoy working together on it.
Yeah, I think, it's like with all teamwork, isn't it? That, I might have what I think are some amazing ideas and the team are like, just doesn't work. But also, you can, because I rely on them for their expertise and their knowledge about, when the audience is most likely to engage. Because I don't do it just because I can say at the end of every month, I posted 45 posts. I do it because we're trying to shift the dial. We're trying to influence people and raise awareness. And so I think, it really is around, we're all sort of out there hearing what other people are doing, watching what's working on that channel, what's working on other channels that we might be able to bring into LinkedIn, and finding different tweaks to the approach, and finding those all important hooks that we talked about earlier, those moments, to add an extra something to the message. And so for example, we did a wonderful collaboration with Aston Martin last summer, just before I went off on some annual leave, but on the back of having done a whole load of trips across Canada and the US. And so we wanted to try to find a way to sort of bring all of that together and say, hey, this has been a phenomenal sort of extended road trip really around North America. So we did some great sort of shots in the Aston Martin, which is a beautiful car, by the way, and sort of use that as a fun way to get into the miles I'm traveling, in order to kind of take this message and really promote the UK here in Canada and the US. So it's also about having some fun, and I think I'm blessed with having a really creative team around me. So that helps, and we all sort of inspire each other to think about how we continue to evolve this presence.
The fun piece is so important, and something I've heard from a lot of leaders is that there are things that you can do through your personal brand and a platform like LinkedIn that wouldn't necessarily be appropriate to come from the corporate brand, but that makes sense to come from a personal brand, and you can experiment and have more fun. And I wonder if that's something that you've experienced, something that makes sense and is totally appropriate when it comes from Emma, but that just wouldn't make sense coming from, the corporate account.
Yeah, and actually, I think we do a really good job here of integrating and intertwining the corporate account and personal accounts, both as Trade Commissioner and then as Consul General as well. And I tend to use Twitter a little bit more for the Consul General work, for all sorts of good reasons. But being able to work across platforms and share between personal and corporate accounts can also work really effectively. I mean, to your point, I didn't use LinkedIn for this because I was sort of presenting myself as the Consul General before the coronation. But the night before the coronation earlier this year, I took a photograph with my husband in our Union Jack onesies, and we were sort of posed with a cup of Yorkshire tea in a grommet mug. That I'd been presented by Ardman Productions. And my husband was there with a glass of English sparkling wine. And we had Sean the sheep sort of, watching over us. And we took this snap and said, really excited for the coronation tomorrow. Now, that feels quite a personal, fun thing to do. So we put that out on my personal account. But it also felt really great for then the corporate account to like that and retweet it, and kind of pick it up from there. I think to put something like that out on the official account would have been just not quite so appropriate, but it was a fun way to kind of link the accounts. So we're always thinking about, what is the right vehicle and the right platform for the right kind of message.
I love that. I love that example. I saw it. It was so fun. And I think, it brings that human element into the world.
And I think, it was the moment of probably my finest moment on Twitter so far, where that tweet was liked by Sean the sheep himself. So,
oh, hey.
I was like, I have arrived on this platform.
That's great. So we were talking a lot about LinkedIn. You brought up Twitter, and I wonder if you could talk a little bit about what goes through your mind as a leader when you're thinking, okay, does this belong on LinkedIn? Does this belong on Twitter? Does this belong on both? How do you treat those different platforms?
I think one of the things I like most about LinkedIn is that the content has a longer shelf life. And partly because of the type of things we're talking about, why the UK is a great place to invest and how the UK has, an enormous number of unicorns, all of that good stuff. And so that the longevity of that is really helpful. So LinkedIn can be great. And also we're often, referencing bigger reports that come out. And so it's, just sort of feels like that's a sort of substantive, longer lasting message. And that's why I think it works so well for me as a trade commissioner. A lot more of the stuff I do with my Consul General hat on feels more appropriate for Twitter because it feels a bit more sort of in the moment, a bit more newsy, sort of a shorter shelf life, a bit more kind of immediate. And it will come and it will go. And that feels much more the rhythm for Twitter. And that seems to be working pretty well for us.
That's great. You mentioned earlier, you said, you have a role of, to influence people. That's part of what you're trying to do. And I just wonder if you can think of any, I'm putting you on the spot here, but any examples with any platform, but LinkedIn in particular, where maybe you've seen a comment from a certain person or a share or a certain reaction where you've kind of gone, yeah, we've achieved that goal of influence in a way that if something is, in a newspaper, you don't necessarily get that feedback to know who read that specific article. I just wonder if you've gotten that type of feedback loop before that reemphasizes the power of doing this.
Yeah, I mean, I think it happens fairly regularly, to be honest. But I'll sort of take you back. One of my first experiences of that actually was back in my previous role in Africa, and we did the first UK Africa Investment Summit back in when was it now? 2020 it must have been. So just before the pandemic started, sadly. But we sort of did all of this, sort of did a whole bunch of LinkedIn activity in the build up to the investment summit, during the summit, and then a lot of material that we gathered in the summit itself. And the reaction to that was just off the charts. I mean, people were sort of, open mouthed, like, how many people saw that? How many people liked it? That's extraordinary. And I think, the team helped me with understanding the impact that each of the posts have and how much engagement they get. And I think one of the things that keeps me so passionate and really helps the team feel energized about it is just how much engagement we get, how many people sort of look at the stuff that I'm posting and kind of form some sort of connection to it. And they tell me that it's consistently well above the average for certainly our department and the kinds of things that we put out there. So that's really exciting, I think, and helps to keep us really motivated to continue to sort of innovate and try things.
That's great. You mentioned earlier, there's only so many people, planes you can get on and hands that you can shake and events you can speak at. One of the things that strikes me as a government representative, you have to stay on message, obviously. And if you're speaking at an event, you can have a script and read it. And hey, the people in the room are there, and you don't have to do a song and dance to keep them in the room. But when you're using technology, it's so easy for someone to quickly scroll by and not pay attention to something. And if it's all just official messaging and if it's dry, it's difficult. And so I would assume that with a government role, it's probably even more challenging to stay on message than, maybe someone who works for a small company or a nonprofit or something like that. How have you found the balance between staying on message and the importance of that, but also being authentic and creating content that is going to resonate with people and, even be entertaining in some cases?
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the tightropes that put off a number of diplomats. Not so much from the UK, actually, because I think we've had a really open, forward-leaning approach to using social media, and that's worked so well for so many of my colleagues as well. But I like to think that the passion that I personally feel for the work that I do and my personal enjoyment of it comes through in the way I talk about things, the way that I try to lead up to important messages, the way that I try to engage. Because I genuinely think that the work we do is really terrific and really helps to change people's lives. And I'm also really conscious that I've got an amazing team all around me, not just those that help on the social media stuff, but all of my trade and investment officers across Canada and the US. We all believe really passionately in what we do. And so that also really compels me to be thinking, how do I get that passion across? How do I get the energy across to really try to, amplify the impact of all of their work, which frankly is a lot of what I'm trying to do, right? It's not all my work, it's all of their work. But I also recognize that, there is some times when, things aren't quite going as you might like. Maybe there are some things that you think are less helpful for the work that we do. I think for me, one of the things I like about LinkedIn is that it tends to be a really positive, reinforcing platform. And so I try very hard to stay on that positive route and make sure that, we're emphasizing the amazing things that people and companies are doing all the time. Because even during the most challenging moments, there are companies out there that are creating phenomenal products and services to bring to their customers. There are amazing investments that are transforming people's lives. And so there's always something positive that you can point to, something that's going well, that you can say, hey, I can stick with it. So for me, I think it's really important to stay positive. I'm also really conscious that, there's a lot of negativity around around the world, actually, and the power of those negative emotions to drag people down. And so in my own little way, I'm trying to, show that there are really amazing things happening, and people do extraordinary things all the time. So the more we can talk about that and the opportunities available for people to be able to flourish, I think the better.
Yeah, and that not only works better because people are happy to celebrate things and to be inspired. It feels better too, doesn't it, when you're elevating all of those positive stories. So it's kind of nice when it has a dual effect of working better and feeling better at the same time.
Yeah. And one of the things I've really loved actually about LinkedIn over the last few months, we have taken the initiative to welcome new arrivals into the team. And so to put something out on LinkedIn to say, congratulations to this person, they've joined our team, we're so excited to have them, and here's a little bit of information about who they are and what skills and experience they bring and why we're so pleased to have them in the team. And the response to that has also been really heartwarming. And I think it speaks to the power of LinkedIn, because of course it's about staying up to date. It's about figuring out who people are and connecting with people. It's also a terrific way to just stay on top of, like, where are people, like, where are they working now, and wow, somebody's just got an award, or somebody's just graduated, or all of those fantastic life milestones and moments that help to make every single one of us the interesting people that we are.
Well, it's all about, I think, this idea with a platform like LinkedIn starting at the center. If you don't have champions on the inside, how are you going to have any champions on the outside? And so when an American gets hired to work for your team and you celebrate that, and all of their friends and family see it and go, wait, what is this job? What does that mean? Why are you doing that? You're achieving your mission by celebrating them, because all of those folks are learning that. And I think that's a pretty cool way to build that championship on the inside.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I want to ask you where you get inspiration outside of the diplomatic community, because I think some of the best ideas sometimes come from unexpected places, not our direct peers, but other groups that we interact with. And I'm just wondering if you can think of places that you found inspiration outside of the world of diplomacy.
Oh, all the time. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think I have the most amazing diplomatic colleagues, including my Deputy Consul General here in New York, who is also a fiend on Instagram and Twitter. And between us, we're always thinking about new ways to take the word of the British Consulate General in New York out to new people here. But I do think that it's important to get those voices and those ideas and inspirations from outside. And I think for me, it's I've copied shamelessly from friends and strangers, frankly, who are doing great things, who I think, oh, I really enjoyed that. I thought that was terrific. The setup of it, the idea of it, the way it engaged the audience. So, I will, this is a note of warning to everybody. I mean, if I see something I like, I will shamelessly borrow it and adapt it for my own channels.
Well, and I think it goes to the importance of, if you're going to use a channel, a platform, using the lingo and learning about it yourself. And if you just hand the keys to someone and you're not spending time on it, you're not going to find that inspiration. But the fact that, you are also taking a personal interest and paying attention to LinkedIn and to Twitter and these platforms, you get these ideas that you can then learn from and adapt and innovate on.
Absolutely. Yeah. But I said, dinner conversations, a quick snatch chat over coffee. There were all opportunities to learn about, what's having an impact and actually how are these platforms evolving? What are some of the new capabilities that are coming through, and how do you kind of use those in different ways to, it's all about engaging the audience to have that impact.
Yeah. I wanted to close by asking you about something I think we're all seeing, that is, there's more of an overlap than ever between our personal brand and our professional brand, and that sort of, gray area, our personal networks and our professional networks as well. And I wonder if you could just talk about how you've navigated that, because I think that can be a really tricky thing for leaders, particularly leaders who are, visible.
Yeah, I think for me, I've always been very conscious that these are personal accounts, but I've wanted to sort of plow them through a professional lens. And so, when I first went on to Twitter, I was thinking, how do I get the number of followers up quickly? And I was like, I know, I'm going to put some videos on about my dogs or something, because that seems to be all the rage. So I tried it, and I just thought, this is not me. It's me, but it's not what I want to be talking about on social media. That's not how I see the value of it. And so, I don't really talk about my breakfast. You'll rarely see me talk about the holiday I'm on and things like that, because I want to use it to get out some substantive messages to the audience. So that said, I do try to give it a bit of a personal flavor. So I mentioned, the sort of the Aston Martin collaboration that we did, and the onesie and stuff for the coronation. I'll also do stuff around, I'm a Seahawks fan, so I can be tempted every now and then to come and talk about how the Seahawks are doing. And I think that that's important, right, to give that authenticity and that natural sense of somebody genuinely engaging and being personable and real on the platform, whatever platform you're choosing. And so that has been a conscious decision, but really to focus in on the substance rather than get too fixated on my social life. That said, I've seen other of my diplomatic colleagues absolutely smash it by talking about football, the soccer kind of football. But that's and that has been really terrific for them, and also been amazing to create a following where they are, that then enables them to reach audiences with more substantive issues. So, there's no right or wrong about this. It's just felt very natural and the right approach for me with what I'm comfortable with.
I think that figuring out what works for you is so important, isn't it? It takes a little bit of experimentation, because for different people, we all have our own interests and our own personal brands, and those things are going to vary. But I love the example of the Seahawks and American football, because if it's not authentic and you don't really care about it, it just seems like those things feel like folks are trying too hard and they fall flat. But in your case, you became a Seahawk fan, you like football, and so it does come through. And that's, unique, is not all Brits understand American football the way that Americans do. They might be more soccer fans, and so it's kind of a unique angle, I think, for you to present yourself to this audience that you're trying to reach about the business opportunities and all the great work you're doing.
I think as well that it's wonderful to see how the social media presence then plays into real life, if you like, sort of the three-dimensional life of people in person. And it's amazing how many people that I do meet who have looked at what I've put out there on social media and know quite a lot about what I'm working on, where I've been. And so, firstly, it's a fantastic icebreaker. But secondly, it's also a terrific way to kind of sense check. Is the message getting out there about the kinds of work that we do, the support that we provide for companies? And so for me, that's a great virtuous circle to be able to kind of talk to a brand new person who feels like they know me a little bit because they knew that I was in LA, or they knew that I'm a Seahawks fan.
That's such a great point, and a great point for us to close on. We started this conversation and you mentioned how great social media can be to do research and see mutual connections and learn something about someone to prepare. But at the same time, as you put that out into the world and you connect with people, if they've used that information to prepare for you, it can be a great icebreaker. And actually the digital relationships, even if you're not connected before the meeting, that ability to see what you're saying and do research can allow you to connect more quickly, more deeply, more authentically in real life, which is what it's all about, isn't it?
Absolutely, 100%.
Well, this has been such a great conversation. I think it's such an inspiration for so many leaders to see someone like you as a trailblazer who's taking an active interest, a personal interest in building your brand through platforms like LinkedIn, working with a team who you were, great to acknowledge, but also really leading that by example. And so I just want to say thank you for being with us today, Emma. And we look forward to following you on LinkedIn, on Twitter, and seeing where in the world you may end up next after this tour of duty.
Thank you. I've so enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Chief Influencer, a production of Social Driver and the Communications Board. If you know a leader who should be featured as a Chief Influencer, please nominate them at chiefinfluencer.org. For show notes and more, visit us at chiefinfluencer.org or follow Chief Influencer on LinkedIn. Until next time.